Hey everybody, how's it going? Andrew here, and I just wanted to give a quick shout out to you guys for being such great listeners. And I mean, it's just so amazing throughout the whole year what we've been getting from downloads and everything else and sharing this content. And it really comes down to you. So thank you so much for being such awesome listeners. And because of that, we're sharing you this awesome holiday episode. I'll be honest with you. It was quite a production. There was a lot of wrangling and some mishaps and the outages and so many things that were going on, but we got it done so you guys can listen to it today. And first and foremost, because it's so big, it's going to be a couple of episodes that you can listen all together. You know, they're going to be released at the same time, and it's very important that you stick around towards the end because we have some very important information we need to share about the show. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this. It's a fun one, and stick around to the end because, again, there's very important information you need to know. And that said, thank you so much for being such great listeners, and let's get right to the show.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, along with our show's producer, Mustafa Price. And this is episode 289, where we're going to be having our holiday special episode. We got lots of things planned for you today, lots of guests, fun conversations, and a lot of inspiring and motivational ones as well, too, as we reflect the year and what to expect for the new year. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite cozy beverage, and join us today in this wonderful discussion and so much more that we have planned for you right here on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody. Mustafa, I got the jingle bells to work.
Love to hear it.
Well, everybody who's tuned in now has already heard it. So excited. Excited to be here today, everyone. I know. This is our holiday episode. We're here to have fun, laugh. Mustafa, as you know, is here with me. How's it going, bud?
Oh, it's great to be here. You know, I'm a big fan of the holiday season. An unpopular opinion, I know, but nothing beats, taking the time to get all wistful and reflective and pensive. So,
yeah, of course. And that's like, that's what we typically do on the show here. We like to reflect and especially at this time of the year and everything. Yeah, we wanted to really change things up a bit this time. Like, as you heard, and I led in with saying, I got the jingle bells to wear. But yeah, really just have fun this time. But I mean, obviously, in addition to fun, really want to be like introspective and in terms of like, how things went during the year and changing it up by not just from our perspective, but perspective of past guests. So, Mustafa, why don't you kind of give a teaser taste of what we're expecting today in terms of the format of the show?
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody remembers the structure we took for the kind of year-end special last year, where we did kind of a best hits. We've done a different version of that is as close to live, I would say, as possible. So you are going to get a compilation of different sort of interviews that we've done with a few people across the industry, but all of these are completely new, never before heard content for the podcast. In addition to that, they're all going to be centered around the same ideas of reflecting and outlook. So taking a look back over the year, as well as looking ahead to future plans and goals. The spirit of the holidays, I would say.
Yeah, and it's so funny you said that. And when we were putting this together, and we were like, think about the format, and obviously it's in line with, like I've mentioned earlier, that we typically do, especially this time of the year. So for whatever reason this year, I've been in a huge, big kick on A Christmas Carol. So the story by Charles Dickens, and obviously there's been so many renditions of this. My favorites in particular are the Disney versions because I grew up with that as a kid and just absolutely love it. It's too short, honestly. But the one with Scrooge McDuck. And then the second one is A Muppet Christmas Carol, which is so delightful and everything else. And then from there, I started watching other renditions and variations of this. I think currently at the moment of recording, I just halfway watched Scrooge with Bill Murray.
Okay.
But what was very revealing, and there were some other ones too I've seen as well, but what was really interesting and revealing about this was simply, man, some of these are so close and the characters and how they're represented. And I'm like, I want to know how close it is to the actual book. So I started reading the book and how this matters to anything that we're doing today was simply, I inadvertently or just simply realized after the fact that basically the format of the podcast is kind of like the similar story structure where Scrooge was visited by three spirits, right? The past, present, and future. And I was like, wow, that was not intentional. And I don't know. It just, interesting
So the good
observation.
news for everyone listening is that our visits with the Ghost of Christmas Future aren't quite as dire.
Yes.
A lot more positive of an outlook, but just wanted to get that out of the way.
Yeah, they're not dire at all. So yeah, thank you for making this. There's like, oh dear. No, so that's not happening. All positive, good stuff, and things along those lines. And so we're gonna start getting into these in a moment. And thankfully that was able to happen because it was really hard kind of coordinating all this. And actually some of these conversations, it's just going to be me. Mustafa was able to join on some of those, but as I'm sure all of you can imagine, it's kind of hard to coordinate times and different time zones and everything and availability with these people. But the fact is we were able to get them on the show. They were gracious enough to give us a little time and to share their awesome insights and have fun with it too. So, so I guess before we kick that off, couple things. Oh yeah, one other thing. I don't know what I was doing, but I definitely conjured up some technical difficulties, if that sentence even makes sense, but I managed to do it and messed up some things with my audio board. So the first guest that we have on, it sounds a little awkward, and hey, we're all like completely transparent here and stuff, and we just left that in. I didn't edit anything, and big reason for that awkwardness is because I was troubleshooting a lot of stuff with that guest at first and finally got to get things working. So if there's a lesson to be learned from that, even if you think you have enough time, don't touch your equipment before you're recording anything with a huge lineup of guests because it's not good. Anyways, for that extra insight, but before we get into these conversations with everybody, Mustafa and I have our own Q box round of holiday questions, and you'll notice that the guests are going to be having this similar type of questions too, which are going to be a lot of fun. But I have a question for Mustafa, a Q box round. So, are you ready for yours?
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay. What's your favorite holiday song?
My favorite holiday song. Okay, so this is a little bit of a weird one. It's Snowman from Sia's Christmas album. So a couple of years ago, ended up being a pretty bad snowstorm out here where we're located. And so New Year's Eve, I just ended up spending with one of my close friends. And we were just like going through like random music on Spotify, hashtag not sponsored, and ended up finding the song Snowman by Sia. And it is so like, it captures like that exact like contemplative, like wistful spirit. It's like borderline a little bit somber, but still very relaxing. It is a very emotionally complex song that happens to fit into the theme of Christmas.
I need to listen to that. I don't think I've ever heard it. I may, or I don't know, may have, but
you should. It'll change your life.
it sounds like it will. I want to hit stop recording now and just listen to that, because if I play it now, it'd be way too distracting for me. Like things would not go well. Okay, well that is not only that, but I mean, as much as I want to listen to that now, that's such an awesome story. Like the fact that, like, I don't know, it sounded like it obviously is super memorable, and I'm sure that's one you look forward to listening to every year.
Absolutely. Now, I actually have a question for you as well. Is there a holiday beverage that you would cite as either a tradition or a favorite of yours or anything like that?
I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can think of, and this doesn't sound like too much out of the ordinary or anything, is eggnog. I love
the right
it.
Answer.
Okay, the right answer. But like, okay, here's the thing with eggnog, right?
Mm-hmm.
You usually, I would say, yeah, I'll stick to that, because usually I only get it in like the smaller containers, because I'm like, it's so hearty and
Very rich.
heavy and rich, and I just can't do that much. Well, this year, for whatever reason, I went through one of those small containers, and then I got a big one, like a half-gallon one. It's still sitting in the fridge. It's still good. We got some time on it, but
yeah,
I just
you
went
gotta
to
pace yourself.
I went to town, like, because I like usually we don't even go through the smaller one, right? So this, and honestly, I'm basically the only one who drinks it, aside from my mother-in-law, who visits us and loves visiting the kids frequently, and I never knew she liked it. She's like, I love it. I'm like, great. Now me and Nana can really, go to town on some eggnog, and if we want to throw anything else in there, kid-friendly or adult-friendly, we can. So there'll be some more eggnog going on. Yeah, so I guess that's my answer. But otherwise, it kind of mixes up a little bit. But yeah, I would say eggnog's the one. But I don't know. I like all types of stuff. So, but that's one I would pick. Teas, other adult beverages. Yeah, eggnog is a good one. You could do just about anything with it. I did throw it in my some cereal the other day too, just to try it.
That's a risky gambit depending on the cereal.
It was Chex, cinnamon Chex, so very appropriate. But man, this stuff was too heavy. I need milk for this. This does not cut it. It was not as good as I thought it would be. It was too rich and creamy with all the other cinnamon and sugar going on in that Chex. And anyways, eggnog. Okay. Wow, we had a moment there. Okay. All right. So, are we ready to get to the rest of this?
Yeah, I'm for it.
All right. So, people, we're gonna just go right into our first interview here. Some awesome things to glean from and everything, and then afterwards, and this will be the format continuing on, Mustafa and I are going to kind of chime in ourselves in terms of what we thought about that, things to glean from, and what types of valuable insights are that you guys can take from our guest experience and what they shared with us, and see if you could apply it in your own way. And it's like I said, it's going to be a fun time. And let's just enjoy this conversation with the first guest. Hello. Astrid? How, you're here, right?
Good. Yeah. Hello.
Awesome. How are you doing?
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. All right. So real quick context for everybody. There's some crazy difficulties I had. I probably shared it prior to you listening to me and Astrid, but besides the point, that's why it was a little awkward with the phone call. But Astrid, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here with you as always.
Oh, well, thank you. And real quick, folks, who we have here today, but Astrid Roseman. She is a communications director from New World Interactive, and she appeared man, honestly, it feels like yesterday. Episode 285, where we were talking about how to humanize your studio and set player expectations. And honestly, that was such a fun and different conversation, because when we were talking about you being on the show, you had this idea you wanted to explore more, and we did, and just it was really revealing in a lot of different ways. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here today on our holiday special.
Aw, thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So, as I've probably said multiple times today, we're here to have some fun and answer some questions. So, to kick things off, we're going to do the holiday question Q box round. So, are you ready for the question I prepared for you?
Yes, let's do it.
Excellent. So, the question is, what is your favorite I'm jumbling my words here. What is your favorite holiday story that you like sharing with others?
Oh boy. Oh no, I don't know. You know what? It's probably less of a specific story and more of a tradition, in that I have kind of family all over the place. My in-laws are on one side of the country and my own family's in a different city. And so every holiday season, we kind of get to go to a different location, or we switch things up a lot and see different people every time. And it's nice. It keeps things sort of fresh.
Yeah, I could see that. And being nice, it's like, it's always like a new adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can choose different things and choose different sort of activities to do in groups and stuff. It's nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and I'm sure you're really looking forward to this year's holidays. So are you local? Are you going across country? What's the plans for that?
I think this time we're just staying put, and we're just kind of gonna do stuff here in Montreal and see what happens.
Nice.
Be nice and relaxing.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome to hear that you'll be a little bit light on the travel, which is always nice when that happens. And sure, and hope that you guys will really enjoy yourselves.
Thank you.
So, that said, we're also here for some reflection and outlook on, this past year and the year ahead, and was just curious, just from your own perspective and your work and how it relates to, the industry and the dev community or whatever. We're curious to know what about your year went differently than you expected, and what did you learn from this?
Honestly, this year really flew by. I'm stunned that we're already in mid-December. It's pretty wild. For me, I think I had some pretty big learns about how to be a better manager, hopefully, fingers crossed. And so I've done a lot of personal, professional exploration in that area. And then also on the whole other side, I think I've sort of found my groove a little bit better. I only started at New World in September the year before. And so this was my first full calendar year at the studio. And I feel like I've just found a much better groove of sort of my position, my team, what we can do, what we can't do. And I'm doing this really awesome thing called planning for next year. And we're kind of steady and stable enough that I can just straight out sit down and plan out the bulk of 2023, which is really cool. I've never actually had time to do that in my previous roles before in a really focused way. And so it's nice. I like it.
No, that's definitely nice. And I mean, I'm curious, maybe you can expand a little bit further, because as it relates to Outlook, I mean, you're already taking some of these learnings and applying it to, basically this future planning for the year and stuff. So I guess what kind of things or how are you approaching this as you're taking from what you learned this past year about improvements and becoming a better manager and doing everything that you can to better yourself and the team? What other kind of ways are you implementing that for next year?
Oh, you should see this thing. It's like a 60-page slide deck. The short version is that I'm establishing more clear, broad goals for my team that we can all routinely check in on. And then I'm also setting very specific KPIs for those goals, which again are broad enough that they should be achievable, although some of them are quite ambitious. They're still realistic, hopefully. And then the whole other side of it is it's allowed us a chance to identify any holes or gaps in the calendar and figuring out what we can do in those gaps. And more importantly, I think from my perspective is by planning all these things out, it allows me to have a better focus on the studio itself because we have to do a lot of brand building for no one knows who we are. And we're New World next year is going to be a 13-year-old company, and nobody in the industry knows who New World Interactive is. And so there's going to be a lot of brand building going on next year. And so this is helping me create space for it so that we can do Insurgency and studio stuff all together all at once.
Wow. I mean, but I mean, just sharing that too and knowing what that looks like. And I know it's for you specifically, but still, I think it's very relatable to anybody else to really get a good idea on how this type of planning can allow you to, be flexible, but also still have those goals and really be focused with your intentions and everything else. So, I mean, just really appreciate you sharing that with us. And it sounds really interesting and hope it all goes well. And I don't see why it wouldn't, but,
thanks. Yeah. Maybe I'll make it into a template and put it on the internet.
Ooh,
We'll see.
I mean,
Ooh.
that sounds awesome. Well, when you do, let us know and we will be sure to share it.
You'll be the first to know.
All right. Awesome. Well, Astrid, thank you so much for being here today. But before we go, for anybody who wants to reach out, connect with you or anything like that, what's the best way to do that?
Probably the best is Twitter, and it's my name, Astrid Rosemarin, AstridRosemarin, or email, or actually Discord. So my email is arosemarin@newworldinteractive.com. And on Discord, I'm Lulstrid, $##0791. Amazing.
I know. All important and sometimes hard information to remember. So, and of course, people, you can also check out the show notes from our previous episode, which is 285. Great conversation, as I already mentioned there before. And feel free to reach out to Astrid if you have any questions about how to do your planning, because it sounds like she's really on top of it with that. So, and maybe when she gets to that point, you have that template, and then we can all benefit from the awesome things that you have put together and shared with the community. So again, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday and enjoy and relax and just have a merry good old time.
Thank you. You too. Have a great break.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, so that was really great stuff from Astrid, the stuff she shared. What was from that whole conversation about her future planning and reflecting on how she's becoming a better manager and such, what were some key things that stood out to you, Mustafa?
So I don't want to risk jumping ahead, but already one thing that I would say, looking back on these, is that there's a simplicity, there's an element of simplicity to what I think a lot of people have to say about Outlook, specifically. When you take into consideration planning, it just seems so obvious when you hear it. Right. But when you actually take the time to reflect on what it means to actually sit down, really plan things out, provide yourself that degree of structure in a tangible way that you can reference when you feel kind of lost in the minutia of the day-to-day. I feel like that's an incredibly difficult skill to grasp, but it is a completely life-changing one, I feel, for people who are able to really thrive in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and I think what things that she shared there that got her to that point was what she was saying, where especially being in this new position, at least for the year, really looking back at personal and and mostly professional exploration, because it's like managing a team and all these other things are important. But through that process, it sounded like that's what allowed her to get to that next stage of the future planning and everything that you just outlined. And even specifically, and these are things that like everything about this stood out quite a bit to me. Like the main thing that she was saying is from the future planning, establishing more clear and broad goals. And I mean, how many times we've said on the show, clarity is so important, right? And in so many ways, and through communication, through your goals, through whatever it may be, having that clarity is so key. But then also defining that a little bit more, because as clear and broad as these goals are that she set for herself, I mean, she's saying, hey, look, we got specific KPIs, and that's important to know so you can clearly identify those things. But outside of being clear, being broad, like she said herself, ambitious, but at the same time achievable, and somewhat realistic, or that she believes that they are still realistic, because you don't want to shoot yourself, you don't want to go too low, but you also want to try to go beyond what you can, but make sure it's not anything that it's like people would look at and be like, there's no way that we're ever going to do that. I mean, there was so much that she shared in that, and it was just so interesting to hear. And again, it all goes back to how she reflected on things that I think gave her a good founding structure to then look outward in all these things that she mentioned and more.
Beautifully said. Yeah, it was a very very thorough, very well rounded, and offered a lot of perspective on like refining skills that one already has, while also looking to expand, your skill set, because it's an eternal climb, the pursuit of knowledge and ability professionally.
Absolutely. And so again, appreciate you, Astrid, for being on the show, and of course sharing that Q-Box moment with us about how you spend time with your family and doing all the different travel destinations every year. And, for those of you listening, we would love to hear how you, fun, memorable moments that you share, or traditions or anything, or along the lines of what Astrid was kind enough to share with us today. So go ahead and tweet us at IGM Podcast and just let us know what your plans are or were during the holidays, in terms of, or what memorable stories you have. We'd love to hear about them there. So again, just at IGM Podcast.
And Andrew, I got to chime in here a little bit selfishly. One thing I'm very curious to hear about, if people want to, tweet about it, is those gaming stories of the Christmas morning, opening a new console or a new game, or like a really memorable one of those. That's the type of stuff that I get really excited about. So
yes. In fact, I don't remember asking that in one of our things. Well, there's still, yeah. So great one. So yes, we also want to know that. Thank you, Mustafa.
Absolutely.
So, and we might be throwing in a few others. So if you have any memorable, like my one quick story, I never got an N64, but I remember my neighbors getting one, and that even itself, even though it wasn't mine, was such a memorable experience, going over my friend's house and seeing what they had and everything, checking out Mario 64 for the first time. It was just like, it was amazing. 8-Bit Christmas, I think, is that movie that came out recently, and it depicts it almost to the T. But anyways, please tweet us at IGM Podcast. What were those memorable council moments that you had, if you did, on Christmas morning or whatever holiday that you celebrate? Let us know about that too. All right, now let's move on to our next guest. I'm sure many of you are familiar with him. He's been on the show before, but we'll just get right to it, and you can hear what he has to share with us today.
Hello.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Good.
Good to hear, and thanks for joining us today. Chris Zukowski is here with us today from How to Market a Game, and he appeared on episode 118. Chris, that was a while ago. That's like, it was forever.
Time flies.
Yeah, right? And well, that episode we were talking about how indie devs can understand and influence consumer behavior, which honestly was such a great discussion that we had. You did some awesome, insightful things there with like talking to like players and all that stuff. And then on top of that, you were also a guest on episode 140, which was how to leverage the dev community. I mean, and it's just great to have you back and be part of this holiday episode with us today. So thank you so much.
Yes, I'm wearing my holiday sweater just for the occasion. I'm ready for it.
That's awesome to hear. Now, is it a holiday sweater or an ugly sweater, or what kind in particular?
It's just as ugly as can be, man. Just I wanted to bring the cheer. I got the Christmas lights on in the background, just sipping a little nog. I am Father Christmas over here.
Father Christmas, absolutely love it. Well, again, can't thank you enough for being part of this special episode we got going on today. And as we promised, everybody who's listening, we got some questions to ask and some fun ones too. So we're going to just go right into the Q-Box holiday round here. And I got a question for you. And are you ready for it?
I'm ready for the Q-Box.
All right. So this one is just, what's your favorite holiday movie?
Favorite holiday movie? I hate to be basic, but it's A Christmas Story. I just love that movie. I've loved that movie since I was a little kid. I can't believe that like some of the things they did in that movie. I was like, you can't have a holiday movie where they make the raspberry sound after singing, a Christmas song where they spit. Like I was like, that is insane. How can that be a real Christmas movie? But it is, and it's a great movie. I watch it every year, at least once, mostly 3 or 4 times because they have it on that constant loop. So definitely going to be A Christmas Story.
That's such a good choice, too. Now, I have some quick follow-up questions to that. Have you seen A Christmas Story 2?
Well, there's 2 twos.
Yes.
There was like a sequel that took place in summertime, which I've caught a little bit of, but then I ended it. I was like, I can't take this. I haven't watched the new one that they released this year because I'm partly kind of scared that it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
But I'm just waiting. I'm going to watch it with my fingers through my eyes, with my eyes through my fingers.
Well, I've watched most of it. It's all I'll say to you is this is a good tribute.
Okay.
But as you can imagine, nothing is ever going to surpass the original, but I think you will still enjoy it and find fond moments in it as well.
Good. I will take that as an endorsement. I'm ready for it now.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Definitely a classic that a lot of us, I'm sure, can relate to. But that being said, let's get into kind of our main mini discussion here with some questions that, with a little bit of reflection and outlook and just love your perception on that whole thing. So let's talk about a quick little reflection here. What would you say about your year in general that went differently than you expected? And what did you learn from this?
Boy, this is a tough question. Okay, here's the thing that kind of, I think, this is more game industry. I don't know where I stop and the game industry begins, but differently. One thing that I think that was really surprising, which I didn't know, was that whole Vampire Survivors thing came out. And there were a bunch of folks in my community who I wrote a blog post about this Vampire Survivors. I wrote it right when it came out and it started blowing up. Well, it took a little bit before the game really started taking off. And I wrote this blog post, and I can send you a link to it. But basically, I was like, I think there's something here. I think that this is a small enough, contagious enough game that if you are a small developer trying to figure out how to making a game, how to market it, this Vampire Survivors type of game is really a good first base to get to. And some developers in my community started taking off on it, and they did really well. And what I learned from this is kind of what sometimes people call a fast follow, which is find a trend, find a genre that is very popular, and see if you can make a version. I'm not saying a clone. I'm saying you find out what the game is, find out what the tropes of the genre are, find out why people like it, and try and build off of that. And, it's got to be a smaller game. You can't do this for some long RPG that's 50 hours or something.
Right.
It has to be a pretty tight game with a tight gameplay loop that's really fun, that people really like. It has to have that kind of sales perspective to it, where people are hungry for it. They just can't get enough of it. And just by saying, hey, we're in this genre, we're a new take on this game that you love, you can really see some automatic traffic that comes your way. And it's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door in this industry and figure out how to release a game. It's never going to do as well as Vampire Survivors, but that's not the point.
Right.
The point is to have something that people are excited about, are willing to give a shot, and then try it. Now, I don't know if it's still Vampire Survivors. There's a lot of games that have been released, but keep your feelers out. Keep an eye out on streamers and stuff like that are pushing these newer games, and see what people are excited about, and be ready to act on those things. And I think that was a big change just to see that in action this year.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I don't know if there's any more you can expound upon, because you kind of addressed this already, though. But it's like from that experience, from what you learned, and from what other players were doing and implementing. How else do you see either yourself or others applying this? Whether it's you providing additional insight with the content that you produce on your blog, or how you see other players applying this information that you learned from this whole event.
I think what you got to do is just keep your feelers out there. I really think that some of the key streamers that you just got to listen to, I really find that they just have their finger on the pulse of Steam shoppers, and those are like Wonderbots, Bladdercat,
Yep,
Noocrium. There are some streamers that just play just about every game, and you can hear in their voice. You got to kind of peer through what they say and hear the excitement in their voice, and just keep an ear to the ground to what is trending right now. Look at the top charts on Steam. Look at new and trending. Keep an eye on that. Every week, go to new and trending. The important thing is you have to be aware of the zeitgeist of Steam and what's going on. I think that's a very important thing that you got to do.
Yeah. So like you said, just put those feelers out and like, take in what you can. And that other point, just putting your ear down and really listen. Cause it's like what you just mentioned isn't anything that you're just going to like simply read about or anything else. It's very it needs to be a little bit more intuitive than that. So really good stuff there. So
you can read about it on my blog, howtomarketagame.com.
You can definitely read those parts, but just those
howtomarketagame.com, folks.
those little nuances. But yeah, so appreciate that insight and everything else, and especially just sharing about your holiday favorite movie and the fact that you're nogging it up and having a great sweater and everything else. And as you shared, but come on, let's hear it one more time. What's the best way people can either get to learn more info about you or reach out to you or whatever? What's the main best place that people can go to?
I publish a blog every week. I write a story about the trends that you're going to see out there. If there's some new genre popping off or something like that, or some game that has done something interesting that can help you market your game. Because if you're like, I have no idea how to market a game, I hate this stuff, I don't know what to do, I just want to make my game, what do I do? Chris, this blog and my weekly newsletter is what's going to help you out. So howtomarketagame.com/free is how you sign up for the newsletter. So that's all you got to do. Just join the newsletter once a week in your inbox. I'll give you some new detail, some new trend that's coming out through the Steam marketplace and PC games.
Awesome. Well, Chris, really appreciate everything that you do for the community, the content you produce, the insights, and just being here with us today. So, Chris, thank you. Hope you have a wonderful holiday, and I'm sure we'll hear more from you sometime soon in the future.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, and happy holidays to everybody out there.
It's always fun and great to have Chris on the show. I mean, he brings so much energy, right? Especially with everything that he does and shares. Quick story, I was on one of his, I think, Reddit Q&As or whatever that he does, live feeds or whatever. And one person on there raised their hand to talk, and he's like, hey, what's up? And she's like, I don't have anything to say other than I just love the energy and everything that you bring. He's like, oh, thank you. It's so nice to hear that. And thank you very much. He's like, but do you have any questions? She's like, no, I just needed to tell you that. but it's so true, right?
Yeah, it's very infectious.
But anyways, let's talk about what Chris shared a little bit, because I think it's some interesting things. So what are some key things that stood out to you about Chris's reflection on just like games in general and what types of games. And yeah, what do you think, Mustafa?
Yes, and I'm going to try not to drone on too long here. I'm a vegetarian, but I'm a real meat and potatoes guy when it comes to game design. Like, I love, 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 like, the conversations. Like, we do a lot of abstract on the show.
Yeah.
We talk about, like, theory and ideas a lot. But when it's really that, like, practical, like, here's a way that you can apply this in the modern game design conversation. Vampire Survivors, for example, not a game I've played myself, but my girlfriend's been playing it like crazy. And it's got, like, exactly what he was saying about like the core gameplay loop, this very like tightly designed game that I think is super easy for anyone to pick up and know what they're doing. And even when you think about like some of the heaviest hitters on the indie side of things, games like Super Meat Boy or Celeste or The Messenger, things that like have dominated conversation around their launch, there is that element of like, these are not games that are reinventing the wheel. They're doing something that people are intimately familiar with and already have an affinity toward, but they're doing it in a very dynamic, different way, in a very like they take a very unique approach to tried and true ideas. And that's not to say that games that go a completely different direction don't have the ability to succeed. But I think so often people they link their sense of integrity to their ability to create something completely unique. There's no such thing as an original idea anymore. What you really have to do is like take something you're passionate about and believe you can do really well. And also like if your intent is to release a game commercially, be conscious of the way that the public is interacting and engaging with things like what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can't stress that enough. And some things I think are interesting too. And this is just my own opinion in coming from this, is that I know like in a lot of this he when he was mentioning about like I could call it like a form of like piggybacking in a way of like a popular game, or he mentioned fast follow, right? And again, there's some key things I think that are imperative to be mindful of with this type of approach, because again, I agree with his approach and everything that he's suggesting here, because it's so insightful. But he's like, hey, look, this is like either like first time devs or devs with like smaller projects or whatever. So important to realize, and like you said, keep that keep an understanding of what's out there. What are these core mechanics that could be kind of built upon, and everything else, and use that as leverage. Now, he did mention a few times, like, look at things that are trending and stuff. And this is honestly, if you read his content or other, he addresses this in multiple facets as it relates to marketing. But even with the game, my side note here is, well, he said like trending and stuff. It's not to say, because here's where I'm coming from. Some people are like, well, I don't want to just try to chase a trend, and I know there's people out there to say not to chase trends. Ultimately, I don't think that's what Chris really means, even though he said it there, because what it comes down to too is the points and factors that he's identifying, that Mustafa, you just called out, are all key things you need to be aware of anyways, and why he mentioned about keeping those feelers out. And another one with the influencers, it's like, see what really attracts them, what gets them excited. And when I said my comment, like, it's not as intuitive as you would think, because he was mentioned, listen to them. When you, like, if you watch a show or an influencer and you can hear the tone of their voice and their expression and how excited they get about something, boom, that's a key indicator to follow. If there's a mechanic within that game like that provides that feedback loop, and you're thinking, boy, I love that, but man, I think they missed the mark by adding one other little thing. Why don't I do that? That's the stuff that Chris is really talking about, and keeping those feelers out. So it's such great insight, because I think it's something that's constantly overlooked. Right. And that's why it was so revealing for him when he found that. He's like, hey, this is one way to kind of get your foot up. It's not a guaranteed success, obviously, but it's one way to get something out there, do that fast follow type game, and to really build you up, so then later you can do maybe more ambitious projects.
And then also, and I'll try not to go too long on this, but like, what is a trend, right? Like, if if a game like Vampire Survivor, for example, is trending, that doesn't mean you have to make a game like Vampire Survivor.
Right.
It could be the tone and aesthetic.
Yep.
It could be the musical stylings. It could be visual fidelity. Like, there are a number of reasons why any game could be appealing to people. And there's nothing wrong, I would say, with like siphoning a little bit of that understanding and incorporating it into something you're working on that might be fundamentally different, but still scratches that same itch for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of great stuff to take there from Chris's conversation. And one thing I'll call it too, I thought was funny. I kept asking him, like, what do players think and stuff? When it was really meaning what, like, devs and studios. I kept saying players, and I'm like, oh, wow, I just really confused Chris. Like, it's like, wait,
We're all
talking
players at heart.
We are. True. You don't have to stick up for me, Mustafa. It's okay. I'll fall on my own sword. Thank you very much. But at any rate, I saw that. I saw that too. I'm like, oh man, I hope I wasn't confusing the guy too much with my questions. I was like, wait, weren't we talking? Oh, you know what? I'll just answer the question. That's probably what was going through his head. So at any rate, well, yeah, some great insights from Chris there, and yeah, we'll as mentioned, we'll link to that particular blog post. Really a good one. I think either within that or there's another follow up to that where he gets even more insight from some of the developers that kind of like did that fast follow or piggybanked off of Vampire Survivors or whatever. It gets extra cool insights there from their perspectives. But yeah, before we move on to the next guest, kind of in line with Chris's Q-Box round, we want to ask you, what's your favorite holiday movie? And maybe give us some context why, as Chris provided. So go ahead, tweet us at IGM Podcast and let us know what your favorite holiday movie is. We'd love to see them, and maybe at some point we'll compile a list. Who knows? But yeah, please share that.
I know yours is A Christmas Carol right now, it seems.
Yeah, it definitely is. Though I have been binge watching Elf too. I mean, Elf, not like number 2. I don't think there is an Elf 2. Hey, there's an idea for you. No, but yeah, Christmas Carol definitely. But yeah, I've been watching a lot of Elf too. Like I watched it at least 3 times now, which unreal. But anyways, yeah. So let us know, what is your favorite holiday movie? All right, Mustafa. Let's go to our next guest then.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
Victoria, how's it going?
It's going well. How are both of you?
We're doing well.
Doing great. Yeah. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It definitely has. Well, super happy for you to be here and everything else. And in case nobody can recognize her voice, which I hope some people can, but we've got Victoria Tron here. And man, it's been a while, right, Mustafa? I mean, what I can't remember. What episodes has she been on and everything else?
Yeah, so Victoria's been with us for a pair of episodes previously. If you don't know her, big mistake on your part. You should probably go fix that. But also, she's been with us on our PAX panel episode that was 120 about leveling up your conversation, as well as the inclusion conversation episode 127, which was around fostering inclusive community.
Yeah, and
That's me.
it's been so long since we've talked to you and everything else, but still so grateful that you're here on the show with us, especially today, because this is such a fun, laid-back episode, and just so grateful that you're able to be here and a part of it, because that's what we want to do, is have a good time, and you're all about good times and sharing fun stuff and everything, so thank you.
Yeah, so funny ad also. I was just thinking about this, Victoria. The last time you were on with us, it was during our first season. You were with Kit Fox, and now you're doing. You're the community director over at Innersloth.
Yeah.
So big come up. Congrats.
Oh, no, thank you. Oh, that's it's so funny, like, kind of thinking about how time passes forward. It's like, oh, yeah, what a good time that was. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So, like we said, and like everybody knows, we have some questions to ask you, and we want to have a little bit of fun with that too. So we're going to go right into our holiday Q-Box round. And Mustafa, what's the question we have prepared today for Victoria?
All right, this is an important one. It's actually the most important question we've asked thus far, which is what is
Okay,
your
I see.
favorite holiday food?
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I got this question. Okay. So, a little untraditional, I guess, in the sense of like when we think about North American meals. But my family is Vietnamese. And so every holiday season, like, we all get together, we like eat food and all that kind of thing. But like just a bowl of pho to me, it's just like, oh, it feels like home. It's warm. It's a hug. You have like a huge vat of it, so you share it. Like, so you like give it out to your family. You share it because you can't make like one bowl of pho. Like when you are actually making it, you have to have like this giant vat of pho that makes like 20 bowls or whatever. And that to me is just like, oh, that's how I know I'm home.
That
That warmth really captures the spirit of the holidays. And
Yeah.
it's making me do a little bit of reflection because when I hear holiday food, I always go to like, what's the most decadent thing I can justify in the moment? But
Honestly, I do that too. Like I definitely am like eating like so many, like I'm addicted to like peppermint. Like I love that flavoring. So like candy canes, like peppermint hot chocolate, like peppermint bark, like all of that, I'm into it. I'm eating it. But like when I think like true holiday just eating food, then I'm like, all right, pho it is.
and I haven't had lunch yet, so I'm just like beside myself because I don't know the closest place to get pho right now, and we're in the middle of a storm right now, and it's just
I see.
it's okay. I'm glad you have such fond memories around that food because it's great. It's and I'm really hungry now.
Same.
But thank you so much for sharing that in such in great elaborate detail. Like, come on, who can quote better now than like a bowl full of hugs? Like, I just absolutely love it. Awesome. Well, again, thanks for sharing. And outside of like having fun and stuff, we have some other questions too, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit too. And why don't we go there? Because with the year coming to a closure and a future year, we like to do some introspective thinking and reflection, all that stuff. So our first question we have is on a reflection basis, and it is, what about your year went differently than you expected, and what did you learn from this?
So one of the things that I'm not sure if it went necessarily differently than I expected, but it was sort of something that I had been really nervous about and almost like actively avoiding, which is that I was actually started to grow my the Inner Sloth community team. So I'm very used to being indie and having to do like the work myself, and I think I never realized how difficult it can be to kind of let go of things. Like I knew like, letting go of things. Yeah. But like for work, when normally you're like, I'm so busy, I'm so tired, like I don't want to like do this thing anymore. And then when you hire on a team, you technically have those resources now. But then you're like, wait, I'm so used to doing all of this. So I think I was really nervous at first building up my community team and kind of letting go and also kind of switching my job. Not like I still do community and marketing work, but also now like I have to do like, some leadership work. And at first, I think at the beginning I was like, oh, like, how difficult could this be? I do community management. Like technically that's also leading a team. But no, I think it's what was different, I think, is just like the how much I want to see people grow and learn and enjoy their job and love community management as much as I have. So getting really invested in it and like really kind of loving being in that like team lead role was definitely very different from me. Sorry, I feel like I ranted on, but like this is something that I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so new.
No, I think that's absolutely fine, and appreciate just expanding on that a little bit more too, because you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of things in there that can be challenging and everything else. But the fact that you kind of like explored it further and pushed yourself and realized that, okay, this is similar, but not, I mean, it's just really helpful to hear these things. Because I think a lot of people are in those situations, right? May not be identical to yours, but they're going to be in a lot of similar ones. So that insight and expanding on that is a little bit helpful. Definitely.
I had to jump in because I love the idea of what you're like when you talk about the unexpected. I think like people are constantly kind of projecting themselves towards like the moments of relief. Like, you know, how can I get to a point where like my responsibilities don't feel so overwhelming? But I think when you get so used to having like your signature on your work and the things that you do, all of a sudden being able to delegate almost feels like it's like too much power. It's like, well, wait, am I actually ready to relinquish this? You know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's been a nice exercise, I guess, in that, and just really being able to, I guess, expand and grow and like, you know, share the elevator, as they say, has been very rewarding.
That's great. Now, with that, kind of looking forward, your outlook, like the coming year and possibly even year, and obviously, you know, years to come even, like from this experience, from what you learned in this process and everything, how do you plan to apply what you learned in the year to come?
Yeah, so I have a lot of different secret projects in the work for next year. You. And I think it's really putting a lot of fear into practice, I suppose. Sometimes I think I can get really caught up in like, you know, wanting to do something perfectly, or because I'm like, oh, like if I do something, someone's going to see it. And that's really nerve-wracking for me. But like similar to how growing the community team was really rewarding, and like, you know, people will talk about like sharing the elevator and stuff, but it's, you know, more difficult to do it in practice and actually do the thing that you set out to do values wise. I think going into next year, as I said, it's like all the things that I'm afraid of or all the things that I'm nervous about, trying to tackle them more head on instead of in a way before I used to kind of skirt around them sometimes, or, you know, really slowly, like roundabout way work myself towards them. Like, no, I'm going to face them head on. I'm going to do the thing. And this is really vague because I can't say exactly what the things are, but very excited for them.
That's really awesome. And also how I overcame my fear and played BioShock. I just picked up the wrench,
my goodness,
and
yeah.
that's the only way I could play because I was just too scared. I'm like, I just got to face everything head on. But anyways, sorry. I totally digress here. Mustafa, anything else other than my silly BioShock comment?
All of 2023 just looking at like everything you post and being like, is that the thing?
Yeah. Is that the secret project?
Everything's a secret project.
No, I mean, honestly, really insightful stuff, and glad you're sharing it with us here today. And yeah, as Mustafa said, we'll definitely be looking out to see what you're posting on your blog and everything else. And I'm hoping that listeners here and anyone else who follows you will too, because we can't thank you enough, Victoria, not just for being here, but the type of content and information that you share with the community as a whole, because it really makes, I think, an impact on a lot of people. And I know we all have our situations where we question ourselves sometimes and what we're doing and is it helpful or not. It really is. So I hope you are fully aware of that, even if it's just coming from us.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Well, we're about on time here, so I'm just curious. I mean, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about you or what you do, what are good ways that people can do that and find you on whatever platforms you happen to be on?
Yeah, so if Twitter doesn't somehow like shut down and implode on itself, you can find me on Twitter at the VTran. I'm also on TikTok at the VTran. Not that I've posted anything yet, but maybe that's a secret thing I'm working on. And if not, you can find me on my website where I do post all those blogs and all those things. And I run a newsletter at victoriatran.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. Mustafa and I are just super appreciative of you making time and being part of this awesome holiday episode.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the work that you do.
You know, it really was great to have Victoria on the show again because it has been so long, right? And as you called out, I mean, the last time we spoke with her, the last time we spoke with her was when she was with KitFox. And boy, like you called out, so many things have changed since then, right?
Yeah, and actually, I do want to elaborate because I had made a comment referring to her change as a come up. That was not intended as like a way of comparing the studios, just that now she's in more of like a director role, overseeing a team, that sort of thing. So more about the career move than the teams themselves. But yeah, Victoria is always like a delightful person to have because she's very fun and very funny, but always makes sure to kind of provide like very insightful and in-depth, contributions to whatever discussion we're having.
So
in this particular case,
exactly. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We've been using key takeaways, I think, as the kind of framework of what we've been discussing. Her contributions on this one, I love kind of the grass is greener kind of approach to it, and referring to like when you're in management, when you have the opportunity to delegate, when it's finally like, okay, maybe some of these things that I do every day, I don't want to be overseeing myself. But when it finally comes time to hand those off, it becomes very difficult to be like, well, I've taken ownership of this, trusting other people to maintain the same level of standards that I hold myself to, which is difficult because we all have a tendency, I would say, to hold ourselves to, I would say, higher standards than we do other people. So it was a very grounded conversation that I think transcends even this industry. I think it's just kind of a natural thing that we all experience. So it's nice to get some validation on that, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, and off of that too, she said this one thing, and I think this is really key in what she was reflecting on and sharing with us was learning how to let go. In some capacity, whether I either wrote a blog post about it or talked about it on the show here, I mean that's a big thing that I think a lot of us can have trouble with. And I mean, within the context of our conversation with Victoria, yeah, like you called out, when you trying to delegate these things, and it's like, okay, and the fun thing is when in a role like that, you still have that. There's a level of accountability on you to be able to properly delegate, to properly let go, but still, and I think this is sometimes we approach things as like, well, I know I can do it better myself. Or so, we get in that kind of like, sometimes it's just better me taking care of it because it saves on time. And I know it will get done right and all these other things, but the reality is that you're right. It adds up. And if you keep that mindset and move forward with that, well, like you said, it adds up. So how much time are you really saving? How much, by not letting go, are you really progressing? And that's why I think it's important, even expanding and going beyond the context of a conversation with Victoria, that sometimes letting go is important, and it can mean lots of different things in your own way. So really thinking about that, and like some quick examples, like, are you making a game that really is more of a passion project and you want it to be commercial, but it doesn't really have a good place in the market? There's no demand and things like that. Tough thing to look at, but maybe it is something that you need to let go at. And I know this is a way more serious type of topic, but still something to consider. Or maybe letting go about, are you too close to something, or do you need to delegate something to someone else, regardless of the reasons why you might limit yourself, like financially or your resources or whatever. But does not letting go, if you're not doing those things, does it also mean you're not progressing? And I think that's like really, for her, at least when we spoke with her, that's like a key factor too. and which I'm assuming here, and just take. But that's about probably a key factor for what her role is, what her responsibilities are at Innersloth. By having this team, building this team, and delegating, that means she has more times to do other things that are helpful to the studio and how they can really grow and progress. Because ultimately, that's what we all want to do with our own games as studios. And those are the types of things that we got to really think about, is how important it is to let go. So that was my key takeaway. And that one key little moment she mentioned there, and why I think that's so important for us to really think hard about with some of the things. And obviously they're going to be they're all going to be challenging or difficult decisions, I think, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. I think the only other thing I'll add is that I'm probably going to be kept up at night wondering what that secret yet to be announced thing is.
Right? Like, I'm sure a lot of people are, right? Like, let's see, maybe we can poke her a couple more times, or ping her or whatever. No, I don't. She's not saying anything, but that's okay.
Skill trap.
But yeah, and then and of course too, the thing I loved is just her explanation of being a bowl full of hugs. Like, that was great.
Yes, absolutely.
I now want bowl full of hugs all the time. Maybe just a call out. I'm not asking anybody to do this, but if you do, it'll be funny. Let's maybe get some memes like bowls full of hugs, and see what we come up with. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. You don't have
I'm gonna let you take point on that one, because
Okay.
it sounds like the end result could be pretty disturbing.
Okay. Yeah, hey, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not editing any of this stuff out. But but the funny thing is if I do, you wouldn't know anyways. But I think this one's pretty obvious that I didn't. At any rate, so bowl full of hugs or not, the point being is, hey, if you have a favorite food during the holidays, please tweet us. Let us know what it is. And if you happen to have this favorite food and a recipe to go with it, please share that too. And we'll get into that in a moment after we have our next guest. So here she is.
Hey, everybody. Again, just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to part one of our holiday episode for 2022. And just a reminder, please stick around for the other part. There's still a lot of great interviews and fun times we have with these other guests. And that is also where we're going to share a lot of important information about the future of the show. So please tune into the next episode. You should already have access to it. It's just part two of this one. A lot of other great information and fun that we're going to have there. So please take a moment and just listen to the next one if you're able to right now, or tune in later whenever you're able to. Thanks again for being such great listeners.